It started like any ordinary Tuesday. The sun was beating down on Victory Park in Dallas, Texas. Inside Lone Star National Bank, the air conditioning hummed, polished floors gleamed, and suits moved through marble corridors like clockwork. Then, she walked in. Dr. Ayana Morgan. Black, beautiful, sharp-jawed, no makeup, no jewelry, just a black turtleneck, gray slacks, and a quiet presence that pulled attention like gravity. She didn't walk with urgency. She walked like someone who already knew the outcome. In her left hand, a slim black portfolio. In her right, a manila folder. She stepped up to the front desk, greeted the receptionist with calm clarity, and asked to speak with the branch manager. Gregory Hall. 52. Navy blue pinstripe suit. A man who'd made it his mission to control what he didn't understand, and fear what he couldn't control. The moment his eyes landed on Ayana, he labeled her. Instantly. Subconsciously. Permanently. What happened next? It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a performance, a deliberate one. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step back from my desk," he said, standing up with exaggerated caution. His voice sliced through the lobby like a siren. Customers looked up from their forms. Phones paused mid-text. An elderly couple stopped mid-conversation. "You're holding suspicious documents," Gregory continued. "We take potential fraud seriously around here." He pressed the button beneath his desk. The one that calls the police. Ayana didn't flinch. Didn't argue. She simply placed her folder on the table, clasped her hands, and waited. That's when a 19-year-old student named Brielle Thomas started live streaming. That's when 147 people joined the stream in under 30 seconds. That's when the story changed. What Gregory didn't know, what no one in that bank realized, was that Dr. Ayana Morgan didn't come for a loan. She came with a federal badge, a camera, a voice recorder, and authorization from the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. She wasn't applying for money. She was conducting a hidden federal audit into racial discrimination at the very bank now trying to remove her. And the whole country was about to watch it unfold, live. Gregory Hall folded his arms. The moment Ayana took a seat, he didn't see a doctor. He didn't see a federal officer. He saw a problem. A threat. He looked her up and down, not with curiosity, but with quiet contempt. His eyes landed on the hoodie she'd tied around her waist. He clocked her natural hair, the lack of expensive jewelry, the way her shoes didn't scream status. And that's all he needed. "Let me guess," he said, loud enough for two nearby customers to hear. "You're here about that loan application? What was it, 2 million? He chuckled to himself, like her request was a punchline. "I'm always amazed at the confidence," he added. "It's impressive, honestly." He didn't say, "people like you." He didn't have to. His tone did the heavy lifting. Ayana remained calm. Her hands rested lightly on her folder. Her eyes didn't leave his face. There was no anger, no reaction, just the kind of silence that makes a man nervous without knowing why. Gregory leaned forward, theatrically opening a drawer and squirting hand sanitizer into his palms. "You understand, we have to be careful these days," he said. "There's been an increase in creative paperwork. You understand." He smiled. It wasn't friendly. It was the kind of smile a man gives when he knows he holds the power, and believes he can use it without consequence. Ayana responded with a simple, measured tone. "Sir, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. I'd prefer to go over the documents together." Gregory raised both eyebrows. "Transparency is important," he echoed mockingly, mimicking her voice. "I agree completely." Then, his voice sharpened. "But I'll save you the trouble. We don't issue multi-million-dollar loans to first-time applicants who walk in off the street, especially not without serious collateral." More heads turned. The room was no longer quiet. One woman near the teller station clutched her handbag tighter. A man in a sports jacket whispered something to his wife. The energy in the bank was changing. The air was thicker. Tension, like heat, started to radiate off every word Gregory said. Ayana sat still. She knew this wasn't just about her application. It never had been. This was about reminding her, publicly, that in his eyes, she didn't belong. Not here. Not at his bank. And certainly not with power. Across the bank lobby, eyes began to linger a little longer. and one pair didn't blink. Her name was Brielle Thomas, 19 years old, freshman journalism major at Southern Methodist University. She'd stopped by the bank to deposit a rent check. But when she heard the tension in Gregory's voice, and saw the way he leaned over that desk, she instinctively opened her camera app. Her phone shook a little as she hit Go Live. Within seconds, comments began pouring in. What's going on? Is he yelling at her for real? Someone tag Channel 8. From behind the teller counter, Luis Cortez had paused mid-transaction. 27 years old, 2 kids at home, and a mortgage he was barely keeping up with. He'd worked here for almost 3 years. Gregory had never spoken to him that way. But he'd seen it before. Not always this loud. Not always this public. But the signs were there. In the looks, the tone, the dismissive hand waves whenever someone asked about their denied loan. He glanced at his coworker, who looked away. No one wanted to be the first to speak. Luis watched Ayana closely. Her posture, her breathing, calm, controlled, powerful without a word. He wanted to do something, but protocol kept his hands frozen. And then, there was Cynthia Reed, 68, retired judge. Been banking here since 1985. Her late husband had built a law firm that still bore his name 2 blocks away. She'd seen arrogance before. She'd seen injustice dressed up in professionalism. And she knew what it looked like when someone stepped across a line. From her chair near the window, she folded her newspaper quietly and placed it on the side table. Her gaze never left the desk where Ayana sat. Gregory's voice rang out again, louder now. And Cynthia tapped the record button on her phone. Not because she wanted to stir trouble, but because something in the air told her it was time to stop pretending. That silence was safety. That silence was neutral. In the far corner, a mother held her toddler closer. A man in a hoodie pulled out his phone too. The audience wasn't just watching anymore. They were documenting. And Ayana? She hadn't moved. Because she didn't need to. The world was already starting to move around her. Ayana slowly unzipped her black leather portfolio. The sound was soft, barely audible, but somehow it cut through the tension in the lobby like a scalpel. Every eye, every camera, every silent breath in that room followed her hands. She pulled out the manila folder. It was pristine. No wrinkles, no tears. The kind of folder used in law offices and congressional hearings, not in loan rejections. She placed it gently on Gregory's desk, right in front of him. Here are my documents, she said calmly. I'd like you to review them before we continue. Gregory didn't even glance down. He let the silence hang for a moment, savoring the attention, the control. Then, with an almost theatrical scoff, he pushed the folder an inch away with the back of his hand. Ma'am, I've already told you. We don't process loan applications like this without prior verification, he said. Especially not for that amount. You're refusing to review my documents? Ayana asked, still calm, but now the edge in her voice was unmistakable. Gregory leaned back in his leather chair. I'm saving you time and embarrassment, he said with a condescending smile. If you had the kind of credentials this loan requires, you'd already be sitting in a private banker's office downtown. Not here, not dressed like that. There it was. Clear as day. No code. No subtext. Just prejudice, raw and exposed. The cameras caught it. The live stream echoed it. Brielle's comments exploded. He really said that? Bro, she came prepared and he won't even look? Watch her be a CEO or something. Ayana didn't flinch. She tapped the folder once with her index finger. In that file, Mr. Hall, is everything you claim to value, she said. Tax returns, business financials, credit ratings, federal ID, references. But you're not interested in facts. You've already decided who I am. Gregory's smile faded, just a flicker. You're free to leave at any time, he replied, reaching for his phone again. Ayana's eyes didn't follow his hand. They stared straight through him. Because the moment he refused to open that folder, he hadn't just ignored her documents. He'd confirmed everything she came here to prove. She didn't blink. She didn't speak. She just sat there, like a woman waiting for a storm she already knew would come. Ayana Morgan hadn't moved in over a minute. But somehow, her stillness was louder than any voice in the room. Gregory Hall paced behind his desk now. The way he kept looking at the door, at his phone, at the growing number of customers watching, it wasn't control anymore. It was discomfort. He knew something was off. He just couldn't name it. Meanwhile, the folder sat untouched, centered on his desk like a loaded weapon he was too afraid to open. From the teller line, Luis Cortez shifted. His hands trembled slightly as he counted bills for a customer who no longer cared about her transaction. Everyone was watching Ayana. Watching the manager. Watching something unfold that felt important. Historic, even. Cynthia Reed lowered her phone, but kept it recording in her lap. She leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms. Her silence wasn't passive. It was judgment. And it was loud. Gregory cleared his throat, trying to regain footing. "I've called security to assist with this situation," he said to the room. Not to Ayana, but to everyone else, like he was narrating his own authority. But the crowd didn't react the way he expected. They didn't nod. They didn't turn away. They pulled out more phones. They leaned in. And in the corner, Brielle's livestream viewer count ticked past 10,000. Ayana's silence wasn't submission. It was confidence. Controlled. Focused. Dangerous. She hadn't raised her voice once. And yet, somehow, it was Gregory who looked like he'd lost control. When a child sneezed near the window, it echoed like thunder. That's how quiet the lobby had become. Cynthia finally spoke, her voice firm and steady. "Sir, is there a reason you're refusing to review her documents? Because from where I'm sitting, this looks wrong." Gregory turned, startled. "It's protocol, ma'am." "No," she said flatly. "It's prejudice." The words landed with weight. Ayana turned her head ever so slightly, acknowledging Cynthia without needing to say a word. Because the truth had already arrived. And it came wrapped not in shouting, but in silence. Gregory Hall's fingers hovered over the phone. The line had been crossed. Not by Ayana. By him. But he couldn't see it. He was too deep in it now. Too proud, too stubborn to walk it back. He picked up the receiver and dialed 3 numbers. 911. The room tensed like a wire pulled tight. "This is Gregory Hall, branch manager at Lone Star National Bank, Victory Park," he said, voice steady, rehearsed. "We have a possible fraud attempt in progress. Black female. Refusing to leave the premises after presenting suspicious financial documents." Ayana didn't even look up. She simply reached into her bag, pulled out her phone, and hit decline. "FBI agent Thomas Blake. Call number 2. Ignored. Luis stared from behind the glass, his heart thudding in his chest. This wasn't just wrong anymore. This was reckless. Gregory hung up the phone with a sense of triumph, like he'd just secured the building from a threat. But all he'd done was open a door, and the storm was already blowing in. "You want to gather your things," he said to Ayana, smug. "The officers will be here shortly. Let's avoid making this more embarrassing for you." Still, she didn't move. She just glanced at the digital clock on the wall. 2:43 p.m. She tapped something on her screen, quietly, deliberately. And for the first time since she sat down, a slight smile pulled at the corners of her lips. Outside the glass doors, a crowd had started to gather. Inside, phones were held higher. Cynthia Reed stood from her chair, calm but purposeful. "If those officers walk in and see what we've all seen," she said, "you'll regret making that call." Gregory scoffed. "With all due respect, Mrs. Reed, I'm protecting the integrity of this institution." "No," she said flatly. "You're exposing it." In the far corner, Brielle's livestream hit 15,000 viewers. "Y'all, he really called the cops," she whispered into the mic. "He just said she's refusing to leave, but she hasn't moved at all." At that moment, the only one who wasn't nervous was Ayana. She was still, centered, in control. Because Gregory thought he was about to have her removed. But she knew exactly what was coming through that door. And she was ready for it. The chime over the front doors rang once. Then again. 2 Dallas police officers stepped into the lobby of Lone Star National Bank. Uniforms crisp. Badges gleaming. Hands resting lightly on their holsters. Not aggressive, just alert. Officer Marcus Hayes, 10 years on the force. Calm. Built like someone who carried both muscle and wisdom. Officer Rachel Lynn, newer, eyes sharp, already scanning the room. The lobby went still. Even the whispers stopped. All cameras now turned. Gregory straightened his tie, squared his shoulders, and stepped forward like a stage actor hitting his mark. "Officers," he said, "thank you for coming. This woman here," he pointed at Ayana, "is refusing to leave after submitting questionable documents. We've had issues lately with fraudulent business loan attempts. I'm following protocol." Ayana didn't move. Officer Hayes turned to her. "You okay, man?" She nodded once. "Yes. Thank you. No disturbance. No threats." "No, sir." Gregory jumped in. "She's non-compliant. Refusing to leave the premises after I requested it." Officer Lin looked at Ayana. "Is that true?" Ayana opened her portfolio again. But this time, she didn't pull out loan documents. She pulled out a badge. A federal badge. Held it up calmly. Fingers steady. "Dr. Ayana Morgan, Senior Compliance Officer, Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. Badge number OC 8175. The silence was sudden and absolute. Gregory's face drained of color. Louise dropped a pen behind the glass. Riel whispered, My God," as the chat on her livestream erupted in emojis, all caps, and disbelief. Officer Hayes leaned in to inspect the badge. Real. Genuine. Issued by the federal government. Not some novelty. Not some bluff. He stood up straighter. "I see," he said. "Ma'am, are you here on official business?" Ayana gave a single nod. "Yes, sir. Unannounced federal audit into reported discriminatory lending practices." The words hit like a hammer. Gregory stumbled back a step. I didn't know," he stammered. "She didn't identify herself." Officer Lin spoke for the first time. "She didn't have to." Officer Hayes nodded. "Federal investigators often don't. It's kind of the point." Ayana calmly closed her badge wallet and placed it back into her bag. Gregory blinked. The room blinked with him. In less than 60 seconds, the power dynamic had flipped completely. The woman he tried to remove had just revealed herself as the one with all the authority. And for the first time, he realized he might be the one getting escorted out. Ayana reached back into her portfolio. This time, she pulled out a small black device, no bigger than a deck of cards. She placed it gently on the desk in front of her. A soft red light blinked steadily. "What is that?" Gregory asked, voice dry now. "A federal-grade audio recorder," Ayana replied. "It's been capturing this entire interaction, beginning at 2:02 p.m., when I first introduced myself and offered my documents." She turned the device slightly so the blinking red light faced the officers. "It's standard protocol," she continued, "for unannounced audits where patterns of discrimination have been alleged. I'm required to document employee behavior under real conditions, unedited, unscripted, and unrehearsed." Officer Hayes nodded slowly. Gregory said nothing. She wasn't finished. She placed a second device beside it. A compact camera. Lenses still warm. "This one's been recording visual documentation," she said. "Every gesture. Every expression. Every phone pulled from a pocket. Every customer who looked away, or didn't." Luis behind the counter swallowed hard. Ayana looked directly at Gregory. "Your refusal to review my documents, your repeated references to my appearance, your decision to call the police before even verifying credentials, those actions are now part of the official audit file." Gregory shifted in place. You never said you were an investigator." She nodded once. "And I wasn't required to." Her tone never rose. But it didn't have to. Every syllable landed like a gavel. Cynthia Reed stepped forward now, holding her phone in plain view. "I recorded everything too," she said, her voice cutting the silence. "So did half the people in this room. If you think this is going to disappear quietly, think again." The police officers said nothing. They didn't have to. The air had changed. Ayana reached for her manila folder again and slid it slowly across the desk toward Gregory. "This file contains not only my financial records, but 3 months' worth of internal lending data from this branch," she said. "Data that shows a 71% loan denial rate for black applicants, compared to 19% for white applicants, with nearly identical credit profiles." The room held its breath. Gregory's fingers didn't move toward the folder. But Ayana didn't need him to open it. Because now, the truth was no longer waiting to be seen. It was speaking, clearly, confidently, and in front of everyone. And no one was looking away. Outside, the crowd was no longer just a few curious onlookers. They were pressing against the glass now. Phones raised. Voices buzzing. Some live streaming. Some already tagging news outlets. Others just staring through the windows like something historic was happening, and they didn't want to miss it. Inside, the air was electric. Brielle's livestream hit 21,000 viewers. In less than 30 minutes, the video had been clipped, reposted, and shared across social media. Twitter was already trending. Hashtag bank while black. Hashtag federal audit live. Hashtag Gregory Hall. One of the country's largest financial influencers had just reshared the clip with one sentence. "This right here is why we document everything." Meanwhile, back in the bank, Gregory Hall's phone buzzed violently on the desk. Regional Director Madison Keene. He hesitated, then answered. "Gregory. What the hell is going on at your branch?" Her voice was tight, urgent. I didn't know who she was," he stammered. "She didn't identify herself. Didn't matter. You just called the police on a federal officer conducting an audit for discriminatory practices, and it's blowing up online. I've got the press department in full meltdown. Corporate legal is already calling for a statement. Do you have any idea how bad this is?" Gregory tried to speak, but the words didn't come. "Stop talking," Madison snapped. "Don't say another word. You're suspended. Effective immediately. Do not speak to the media. Do not touch another customer. Security will escort you out." She hung up before he could respond. Cynthia Reed turned to Officer Hayes. "I assume someone will be filing a report about Mr. Hall's actions today?" He nodded. "Absolutely. Everything she said, everything she's documented, it's real. And it's going in the official record." Ayana remained seated. Still composed. Still unbothered. Because while Gregory Hall was spiraling, she was building a case. The kind that wouldn't just change policy, but change precedent. Behind the counter, Luis Cortez quietly grabbed his phone and texted his wife. "You won't believe what just happened at work." Reporters were already pulling up outside. Cameras. Tripods. Microphones. One news van bore the logo of Channel 5 Dallas. This was no longer a private embarrassment. It was a public reckoning. And for Gregory Hall, there was no walking this back. Because the truth had been recorded, shared, and believed. And the whole country was watching. Security arrived faster than anyone expected. Two plainclothes guards, familiar faces in the bank, now looked unsure, caught between loyalty and protocol. One leaned toward Gregory, whispering quietly. "Corporate says you're suspended, sir. You'll need to step away from the desk." Gregory froze. The words didn't register at first. After nearly 30 years in banking, being told to step away felt more foreign than any language. "I'm the branch manager," he said quietly. "Not anymore," the guard replied, more gently this time. Luis watched from behind the glass wall, heart pounding. He'd never seen Gregory uncertain. Never seen him cornered. And now, he looked small. Not humbled. Just exposed. Gregory backed away from the desk with hesitant steps, hands trembling slightly. Ayana remained seated, still in that same calm posture that had defined the entire ordeal. The irony was thick. He had called the police to remove her. Now, he was the one being escorted out. Phones followed his every step. Some customers stood. Others filmed in silence. Cynthia Reed didn't speak. She didn't have to. Her silence was louder than applause. At the door, Gregory paused. For 1 second, he turned back toward Ayana. There was something in his eyes, not quite apology, but the awareness of something irreversible. She met his gaze, briefly. No malice. No satisfaction. Just clarity. He stepped outside. And the doors closed behind him. Within seconds, Channel 5 reporters rushed forward, shouting questions. "Mr. Hall, why did you call the police on a federal officer? Were you aware of the discrimination complaints filed against your branch? Do you have a response to the livestream evidence?" He said nothing. His mouth moved, but no words came. The camera flash reflected off his name tag, still pinned to his chest. But that name would soon be gone from the wall. Inside, the mood shifted. What once felt like silent tension now felt like release. Ayana looked around the room. Customers, employees, witnesses. She wasn't angry. She wasn't triumphant. She was resolved. Because Gregory Hall's fall wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability. And now that he was gone, the real work could finally begin. The lobby felt different now. Not lighter, not yet. But quieter, calmer. Like the storm had passed, and people were just beginning to realize they were still standing. Ayana remained at the desk, not Gregory's desk anymore. Just a desk. Neutral. Unclaimed. She turned to the two security guards still stationed by the doors. "Thank you for your professionalism," she said quietly. "I believe we'll be okay from here." They nodded, unsure of whether to speak, then stepped back. Ayana glanced across the room. Behind the counter, Luis Cortez stood frozen, unsure what to do next. His hands were at his sides. His eyes locked on hers. Something unspoken passed between them, something human. She stood and spoke. "Mr. Cortez," she said. "You've worked here how long?" "Almost 3 years, ma'am. Would you be willing to step in as interim branch manager until corporate designates a permanent replacement?" Luis blinked. Silence. Then, "Yes, I'd be honored." Customers began to whisper. Some clapped quietly. Cynthia Reed smiled without a word. Ayana turned toward the center of the lobby. "This branch is now under direct compliance supervision," she said, addressing everyone present. "That means new training, new leadership standards, and, effective immediately, a review of all loan denials issued within the last 24 months. Heads turned. Eyes widened. Any applicant who was unfairly denied, especially those who meet federal standards but were dismissed based on bias, will receive priority reconsideration, she added. If you're one of them, or know someone who is, come forward. A man in a black hoodie raised his hand quietly. "I got denied here 6 months ago," he said. "Perfect credit. Great job." I walked out confused. "Come see us again," Ayana replied. "That stops today." The reporters were still outside. Cameras rolled. But now the story was shifting, from outrage to accountability. Ayana pulled out her notepad and started writing names. Luis moved to her side, listening, organizing, learning on the fly. For the first time, the bank felt like it belonged to the people in it, not just the person who ran it. The marble floors were still the same, the walls unchanged, but the system, it was no longer intact. It was in motion. And Dr. Ayana Morgan, without raising her voice, without moving from her seat, had just rewritten how this branch would operate. 2 weeks later, the gold nameplate above the manager's office door read, Luis Cortez, acting branch manager. Below it, a printed sign had been taped to the glass. "We don't judge people by their clothes. We review their paperwork." It was a quote from Ayana. Simple, sharp, impossible to ignore. Inside the branch, things looked the same, but they felt radically different. The staff had undergone emergency compliance training. Posters were updated. Lending criteria were re-evaluated. Loan applications were now reviewed by 2 managers, one internal, one external. Every single time. And sitting in the break room, framed above the coffee machine, was a single snapshot from that day, taken from Brielle's live stream. Ayana, seated. Gregory, standing, mid-sentence, mid-judgment. It wasn't posted for shame. It was posted as a reminder. A reminder that professionalism is not posture. That power doesn't come from volume. And that sometimes, the quietest person in the room is the one holding the future. Brielle's video had gone viral. Over 6 million views. She'd been interviewed by 4 local stations and accepted a paid internship with the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. Her pinned post read, "Never underestimate the power of a phone and a backbone." Cynthia Reed, retired but re-energized, had taken a new role on the bank's Community Oversight Committee, established per Ayana's recommendation. They met monthly, reviewed real cases, listened, not just spoke. And Ayana? She was already gone. Not gone, but moving on. Another city. Another unannounced visit. Another institution unaware they were about to be audited by someone who could expose decades of buried bias without ever raising her voice. That was her gift. Power. Potus. And the lesson, it lives here. In the eyes of every teller who no longer makes assumptions. In every applicant who walks through the door and gets a fair shot, not because someone's watching, but because someone once did. It lives in Brielle's video, in Cynthia's words, in Luis's steady hands, and in yours. Because maybe you've seen something like this before. Maybe you felt that burn in your gut when you saw someone treated unfairly. Maybe you've stayed silent. But next time, maybe you'll speak. Maybe you'll record. Maybe you'll remember Dr. Ayana Morgan, not because she shouted, but because she didn't have to.